The show's going to be a little different this season.
We are referring to this as Game of the Game. Well, the game is that there's a hat. In that hat, there are prompts. We do not know what these prompts say.
You and we both don't know what we're going to be talking about next episode. Cookie Pocket, the game of the game.
The game of the game of the game of the game of the game.
The game of the game. Well, this isn't going very well, is it?
No.
What a start to the season, eh?
There's no better way. There's no more cookie pocket way than this way.
Well, yeah. So last time I pulled out of the hat the prompt, which was penned by Mitchell, a horror film with less than 2 out of 10 on IMDb. And I initially, when I pulled that prompt, I thought, oh, okay, I can think of lots of really bad, like cult horror movies from the 60s, the 70s, when the drive-in was a big thing and people were just cranking out garbage. I'm sure they have less than 2 on IMDb. Turns out it is hard to get less than a 2 out of 10 on IMDb, both due to, people posting ironic 4 and 5-star reviews, people just going, yeah, it's not that bad. The sheer minuscule number of people who have seen some movies that exist. So it was kind of hard to find a movie with less than 2 out of 10 on IMDb. Initially, I hoped maybe I can find the list of everything on IMDb, and then I can filter it to beneath 2 out of 10 and select horror, and that'll be a surefire way to find a movie that fits. Maybe that's something you can do. I couldn't find an option to do so. I feel like it's probably unlikely that there's a list of everything on IMDb, because loading a list of every movie ever made would probably be challenging for a lot of computers. So what I ended up doing is going to the bottom 250 on IMDb, which are not the lowest rated movies on IMDb. It's the lowest rated movies with a certain number of reviews, I think. I filtered it down to horror, less than 2 out of 10, and it gave me 2 options. Birdemic, Shock and Terror, which I don't want to talk about, and Manos, The Hands of Fate. So today we're talking about Manos, The Hands of Fate. We did this when we did our Dune megasode, and I think it could be fun to repeat. Mitchell, could you kindly, in as few words as possible, explain for us what Manos, The Hands of Fate is about?
I knew so much more of what was going on in this, I'm going to be honest. So, it all started with the elevator music. Scenic drives through El Paso, Texas. And you can be 2 types of couples. You can make out for over an hour in movies time, or multiple days at a time, I guess.
Until it gets dark?
Until it gets dark, and then the daytime, and then the dark again. Or you can get lost. And you get lost. Especially if you are the director and the producer and the writer and the lead actor, or sort of lead actor. Then you get lost, and your woman is incompetent, and your female child is incompetent, and your dog is incompetent.
Daddy, I'm cold.
Yes. So, boom, dog dies, turns into a Christmas decoration in the dark. And then you go back, and there's this goober guy that's what's his name? I already forgot his name. Weary Torgo, the weird tweaking out guy off the streets of Baltimore, telling you, woman, I want woman. I don't want my master to have the woman. And then boom, there's a master, and there's women, and the master wants the women, and Torgo wants all the women, and then the women are just standing there menacingly, and then the master's like, shut up, because all the women are talking, and all the women are having a slumber party, and he's like, shut up, and I'm like, I agree. Stop the scene, please stop the scene. And then he's like, Torgo, stop being horny. And then he's mad at Torgo, and then the woman and the child are sleeping, and she asks where's the dog, and then the guy is outside and he gets knocked out, and then Torgo's tweaking out again, and then the master's like, we gotta this woman wants the child to be saved, so kill her, but first we gotta kill Torgo. And then Torgo, you think he's dead, but he's alive, and then Torgo's dead, but he's actually alive again, and then he turns him into a cooked hand, and then yeah, and then there's a woman. The woman also gets murked, I think, or no, she gets beat up actually. And then the master stares in the camera. And then there's more people to feed.
And none of them are named Manos.
None of them are
None of them.
Manos.
Yes.
Manos is the concept. Yeah. He's in the black. He's in the dark. He's the guy. He's the statue.
I think that's a pretty effective walkthrough of the whole
Thank
movie.
you.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Christian?
No, I agree. I think that's about as cogent as is possible to be when talking about this.
The master's dog.
This ramshackle.
The master's dog was so cute. The Rottweiler was super cute.
Yes, I did like the master's dog, and I liked the poodle, the initial dog as well. I think my biggest. Yeah, right. I think my biggest mistake approaching this was looking up the runtime, seeing 70 minutes and thinking, oh, that's not so bad. This will probably be fun. This will probably just be, a barrel of laughs, incompetent performances, probably really bad ADR like I complain about all the time, but whatever. This is, the prompt is the prompt, and in the opening scene I was kind of like, oh, I'm kind of digging this elevator music and these illogically sequenced shots of cars driving on hills, it's kind of vibey, whatever. And then at some point the soundtrack turns to this saxophone solo that sounds like a dying cat. And I'm just like, how did we get here? So yeah.
Yeah, so I knew about this movie before picking it. I wouldn't call this an obscure movie. It's kind of known as one of the worst movies ever made. There's a very famous episode of Mystery Science Theater where they talked about it. I think there's a riff track as well. This is a movie people have been, clowning on for a very long time. This is the first time I'd ever actually watched it. And I don't think it's entertainingly bad. For the most part, it's just very, very boring. 90% of every single scene is just dead air because it doesn't feel like they edited the movie. It feels like they just took all the footage and put it in sequential order. So, and you can tell that there's at least a few shots where that happened because the camera that they were using, it takes a little while for the film to get up to speed. So when you're operating a camera like that, this is Zach's camera talk section. The beginning and the end, very beginning and very end of a shot tend to flare out into white because that's the film slowing down and being exposed with more light than it can take and just blowing out. And there's multiple shots in the movie that start with a white flare and end with a white flare, which means they use the entire shot. And that happens so often. They didn't edit this movie. They just kind of threw it in order. And so it's interminable. I mean, I think needless to say, it's a 1 from all of us. I am not going to accept any claims that I did not satisfy the prompt with this film because, I mean, is this the worst thing we have ever watched for the show? I don't think there's a question, but is it?
Christian?
That's a good question. In my review, at the end of my review, I state, I think I know why Zach chose this film. And having heard now the preamble about how hard it is to find one of these meeting the criteria, maybe I'm a little off the mark. But at the time I wrote that, I assumed that you chose this to earn a retraction or an apology from me regarding the work of Lucio Fulci and Italian horror films such as, in particular, The Beyond. I think that was the one I was hardest on.
Yeah, you really didn't like
at
that
least
one.
in rating. I think I gave the Beyond a 1, and I will just I must be honest. This is vastly worse than The Beyond, and they probably do not deserve to share the same 1-star rating. I'm not sure what the next closest competitor would be for me. Maybe Sgt. Pepper, but even that, I don't think I despise that as much as either of you did. I wonder, Zach, if Paul Blart enters the frame or is close in this conversation.
This is absolutely worse than Paul Blart. I'm
Okay.
I'm gonna play ball here.
Oh man.
Any movie in which the shots are in focus and the set is lit in some way is better than Manos: The Hands of Fate. I'm not saying I want to watch Paul Blart Mall Cop again, but I can't genuinely look at Paul Blart Mall Cop and say it is worse than Manos: The Hands of Fate. A screensaver that runs on a TV in a hotel lobby is better than Manos: The Hands of Fate because the shots are in focus and probably exposed properly.
Oh yeah.
That's the bare minimum of what you need to meet in order to qualify as something.
You could also desecrate. You could desecrate holy grounds with The Last Airbender. So I think that Last Airbender is worse. Pretty easily
Really?
for me. Yeah. I think it's that. I think it's that incompetent.
Well, we didn't talk about that one on the show. I would be interested to talk about that on the show because that's M. Night, who I don't think we've ever had on the program.
No.
Even though he
Probably
lives
on a
quite
weekend
nearby,
review
we should
somewhere.
call him in Philadelphia and see if he wants to come by as a guest.
I think he'll never. The fact we even mentioned it right now, his blacklisted us. It's too late.
Yep, it's over, guys.
Yeah.
It's so over.
I think I'll mention, if we don't mind, I'll mention things that I liked.
Sure, yeah.
I liked some of the framing of the master, like the actual framing of when he puts his arms up. I liked when Torgo gets murked. I thought that shot was pretty cool, and him holding the fiery hand.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I did like that as well.
I did like when I'm really trying. I did like, even though it was horribly edited, the transition between him sitting and the painting, even though it was so beyond intentional. I still like it. I like the painting. The painting's cool. And I like the general setting. I mean, I feel like you could do something with the setting exclusively, with a slightly better production. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, fundamentally, the overall structure of this movie, it's not as if the idea of, okay, people break down on a back road and find a house and there's some weird stuff in the house. That's not like an unsalvageable concept.
Yeah.
This movie basically has the exact same structure as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah. And I think Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It really takes advantage of its like complete lack of a budget and lo-fi aesthetic in a way that this movie just doesn't.
Yeah.
I do think I'll agree with you, Mitchell. A lot of the kind of witchier elements of the movie don't look that bad. They're just executed and portrayed awfully. Mm-hmm. So like, the hand cape doesn't look terrible. Some of the props and things like the weird metal thing with the hand that goes over the fire and like the occult backyard, or maybe it's like another room in the house. It seems to be through an interior door, but then suddenly they're very clearly in the desert. So who knows? But like that doesn't look awful. Torgo's prop burning hand doesn't look terrible until the master has to throw it on the ground because it's gonna burn his fingers. I guess some important background on the movie is that the guy who wrote, produced, directed, and starred in it, Hal Warren, was not a filmmaker. Who'da thunk it? He was like big in community theater in El Paso, where this movie was made. So he was like a weekend actor. He did it for fun. And at some point, Route 66, which was there wasn't cable in the 60s. It was a network TV show, I think on like NBC. They came to town and shot some episodes. And he was on set as like a bit character or an extra or something. And he became kind of decent friends with one of the writers on the show. And they were having a conversation over lunch one day when Hal bet him that it wasn't difficult to make a horror movie. He said, "I bet I can make a horror movie, and I know nothing about movies." So this movie is made by a fertilizer salesman who, on a bet, rather arrogantly said that he could make a movie with his total lack of resources or knowledge. Do you think he won the bet? I mean that genuinely. Because this isn't good, but it is a movie. They finished it. They put it on screens. People have been talking about it for decades. Do you think this satisfies the bet of it's not hard to make a horror movie?
Oh, I thought you were asking, is this a movie? Which
I mean, that too. That can kind of come into play. Do you think that what they made is a movie that satisfies? Do you think he came up to his writer friend, who later won an Academy Award, by the way, and said, "Here's my movie, pay me"?
Well, it's interesting. I think with all of that background, I'm inclined to be a little bit more generous about certain things. And like all you said about the framework and how it resembles Texas Chainsaw in terms of this sort of loose premise, I think maybe there's something salvageable here. Maybe this is like a 2 out of 5 short film if it's edited competently. I don't know. When you first started asking this question, I immediately thought to debates I'd have with students, with peers in college about what constitutes music. And I think the easiest answer to that is pitch and rhythm. Does it have a discernible pitch, or i.e. like a sound high or low, and rhythm in the loosest frame possible. So like a simple clapping pattern could be viewed as music all on its own, under that criteria. But when we're talking about a film here, I think there are necessarily more things at play. But I don't know. You talk about the loose story being there. I think what the probably the strongest argument against it being a horror movie, or proof that horror movies are easy to make, is how often the dialogues seem to contradict itself. This kind of played like a fever dream to me, and I'm already forgetting stuff. I finished this like an hour before we started recording, so this should be quite fresh, but it's not. But like the first time they enter the house and Torgo's talking to them, and they see the picture of the master, and Torgo's like, "Oh, the master doesn't like dogs when they're outside," but then the master is pictured with the dog on the painting, and has the dog. And
I didn't even think of that.
But there's a lot of little things like that, and sometimes it'll be a line apart from each other. Like the master doesn't like children, but then the whole thing is the master like kidnaps the child by the end. So I don't know. I guess if this qualifies as a horror movie, which I think it does, then I think he won the bet. But I don't think it's a good one.
I'll say for me, it was pretty easily comprehensible. I'm actually not having much of an issue remembering what happened. I didn't interpret it as much of a fever dream as much as I would like a Fulci film, honestly. I feel like the intent here is so it's simplistic, and it's very incomprehensible, but incomprehensible from a writing perspective, not incomprehensible from an overall interpretation or messaging perspective. Like Suspiria, I feel like takes some effort to really get down to the full scope and intent. I feel like with this, there's so little to work with, and the editing is so poor that you can very easily discern when a scene begins and ends. So for me, it's very, very easy to follow, and it's very boring. So I mean, I could side with you on like it being hard to remember from that perspective. But I mean, you're thinking about the fact that it's just like these are barely even actors. Like this is not even. This is so lame and stale, but like you get the point of the scenes. Like there's not any. I feel like maybe with the Manos scene that's a little weird, but I still think it's just trying to copy the stereotype. Like that was my takeaway. It's trying to take away like yeah, it's some devil worshipping god thing, whatever. I get the rest of the story. Everything else is just fanfare at that point, including the like 10 minutes total of footage of the sleepover wrestling that was going on the beach with all the women. And like, sure, the intent behind them specifically, there's not like an intent, but like I get what's trying to be done, and I feel like there are other films that we've seen that it's much harder to discern that, which is a positive and a negative, I think.
Yeah, I think this movie compares to another film which we didn't talk about as a main film on the podcast, but we did talk about it in Week in Review, another iconically bad movie. I think this movie is quite similar to The Room in that what it's trying to say is so maddeningly simple and so padded out and poorly executed and filled with just other stuff. In The Room, it's just random things that don't have anything to do with the story at all, like the mother-in-law who has breast cancer and she's like, yeah, whatever. In this, it's just great swaths of nothing because they didn't know like what to do to fill a feature-length runtime. But I think that is the stuff that makes it feel confusing and makes like what even happened in this movie. I do think, Christian, you're right, and I mentioned this in my Letterboxd review. If you were to sit down with this, I think anybody who knows how to use any editor, whether it be iMovie, Final Cut Pro, DaVinci, Premiere, heck, Windows Movie Maker, you could trim this down to like a 10-minute short film very easily. I don't think it would take you, I'm going to be bold, I don't think it would take you 3 hours. It might not be good because the material isn't good. You can't spin gold from straw, but you could easily just chop out all this dead air where they're looking at the painting and then they're nervous, and then they're looking at the painting and then they're nervous, and then they're looking at the painting and then they're nervous, and then Torgo walks in and then they're looking at the painting and then they're nervous, and then they're looking at the painting. You just cut all of that and you can get down to something that resembles a plot that moves with some kind of energy. I said in my review that this is like sleep inducing, but not in like a way where you're like, it's cured my insomnia, it's time to take a nap. In a way that almost like when you take like air sickness medication, you feel yourself being like dragged into sleep in this really like nauseating way, and you feel kind of like nervous and ill.
Yeah.
Manos made me feel ill, basically, is what I'm saying.
I experienced that exact sensation and like closed my eyes and sort of nodded off for around a minute and then had to rewind and was very upset that I had to.
Yeah, I totally see the dead air thing. I think that was probably the worst offense. Yeah, I think if you just gave me scissors, I could figure it out, Zach. I'll just snip the film and splice it together, however you do that.
I think if we were to talk about things we quote unquote liked about this, it's funny because I'm inclined to say I liked that it felt like a movie, which maybe goes against everything I've just said for the past 20 minutes. But when I say that, I mean I like how it was so obviously made on a shoestring budget, in the middle of nowhere. I watched this on Canopy. I'm guessing you guys did too.
I did as well, yeah.
Which initially that gave me some hope that maybe there was some cult charm or some misunderstanding about the quality here, because Canopy's a home to a lot of Criterion Channel stuff or recent indies that people like. But alas, not the case here. But anyway, I liked that at least in the scan on Canopy, you can see a lot of blemishes, not just when they use the entire shot, but also you can tell that it's a slightly beaten up film. And for a movie like this, that's this old, that's this obviously low quality and this level of amateurism, I did sort of enjoy a presentation that took no efforts to hide that, if that makes sense.
I think because I will agree, the aesthetic of the movie is kind of fun. And it is neat to see. You really do get the feel that this movie is being put together through blood, sweat, and tears by a couple of friends in El Paso who really don't have the resources or the means to be making it. I think that kind of story is way more interesting than the actual movie. And actually, if you are interested in the making of Manos, there's a pretty good student documentary that was made in the early 2000s called Hotel Torgo, which was made by some Canadian university students. They came down to El Paso and they found the guy who plays the man in The Making Out Couple. He was like one of the few people who still lived in El Paso, and apparently he worked at like the equipment rental place where they got the camera to make the movie, and he was also like one of the cameramen and the set coordinator, and he's a pretty charismatic guy, and he just like told them all these stories about the movie. They put on like a revival screening that he attended, and it is very neat to hear those stories of like, well, you know, yeah, it's really bad, but like, you know, we tried and I remember it fondly. Like it's nice to hear those stories from the horse's mouth. You can find it on YouTube if any of our listeners are interested.
I mean, he made out pretty good. He literally just got to make out with a girl the whole movie.
He didn't. So. He made out pretty good, literally and from memory. Yeah.
Well, he also has a story about like he talks about how there's that POV shot of when Torgo is being slapped to death by the wives. He was the cameraman who did the POV, and he talks about how like, yeah, and they were slapping me around, and then they started grabbing my balls.
Yeah,
he is a funny guy. There's a point in the documentary where they're interviewing him, and clearly he didn't really care. Like, not that he didn't care, but like he was like, yeah, you could just interview me while I'm at work, and he just like smoking a cigarette, and he's an amusing guy. But speaking of Torgo, if I was to say my kind of positive about the movie, I think John Reynolds as a Torgo, it's not a good performance, but he is at least an actor who was making choices compared to everybody else in the movie who's just standing there with their hands at their side and saying their well, I can't really judge how they're saying their lines because the movie was dubbed by 3 people who didn't have anything to do with shooting in post, which is why the daughter sounds like a 30-year-old woman doing a bad falsetto. But so everybody else is just so boring to look at versus John Reynolds, who gives us a weird, twitchy, tweaked out performance. Now it's sad in hindsight to learn that according to members of the cast and crew, he was using LSD throughout like the entire production, and a month before the premiere, he committed suicide. So, in hindsight, what you're seeing is a man clearly struggling in a very public way, but that's something to talk about and something to remember versus everybody else who just looks like mannequins. So that Torgo, you know, for better or worse, is maybe my favorite part of the film. And I apparently in the screenplay, I just think this is a very funny detail, even though I don't think it's been confirmed. In the screenplay, Torgo was meant to be a satyr, which in Greek mythology is, you know, a creature with the top half of a man, legs of a goat. But apparently John Reynolds put the appliance on backwards. And nobody told him. So Torgo just has these weird big knees that he clearly is struggling with.
That checks out.
I wasn't sure if he had like an actual physical disability or not. So I wasn't sure if I was allowed to find humor in it.
I will say that in addition to the atmosphere that comes across from the poopy quality and what is it, like 15 millimeter square? I don't know.
They probably shot this on 8mm. It does not look good.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about the subtle. I can't believe. I feel like I'm pulling this out of nowhere, just like the army. I feel like there's definitely indications of the era in the writing and the way that they act, and I feel like a lot of it actually wasn't intentional. And one of the things that really tipped it off for me was how small what's her name's feet were. They were like super narrow, as if she literally only ever wears heels all day. And I was like, wow, that is
Oh,
a
the
very
wife?
yeah, the wife. I was like, that is very error
Ah.
correct. Because if you go back to that scene, it's like her toes are non-existent. And I was just thinking like that sucks, right? And that reminds me of the time. I'm like, oh right, all the wives have like 60s haircuts. Everyone's dressed
Mm-hmm.
like the 60s. Everyone, especially Michael like talks like the 60s, and the
In his
wife.
cardigan.
Yeah, the wife, she's like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" And he's like, settle down, the car doesn't work." And he just has a revolver in his in his glove
In his
box.
glove box.
Yeah, I just thought all those little, and the flashlight and everything, asking for a phone, and it's like 10 miles away, and just stuff like that. I thought that was unintentional,
Might as
but
well be 10,000 miles away.
yeah, right. Funny enough,
Yeah.
it reminded me of Resident Evil and how poor the voice acting is for that game. Like Jill, because you almost became a Jill sandwich because there's a room that closes on her. I think I mentioned that like 2 or 3 times before, but it's one of the most iconic
Yes.
lines from that game. But yeah, I thought that was kind of cutesy, I guess.
Yeah. One look at the wives in their granny panties and cone-shaped bras, and you know exactly when this is from.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. Okay. This reminds me of it makes it much more appealing from an amateur perspective when you think about the first Evil Dead, and you realize Sam Raimi was just a more competent artist. He was a more competent visionary, and he had a lot of really great ideas, and he was very, very creative with his camera work. And he happened to have people that could at least act 2/3 of the way out of the paper bag, and that's a lot better than not trying, practically not trying at all in this film. But it shows that there's a demarcation line that you just feel bad. You're like, this guy didn't know how to make a movie, and it's just, it wasn't completely garbage. He wasn't trying to do something so out of scope, but it was a movie. And yeah, I have to agree with you guys on that.
Yeah, I think I've been known for being very generous with my definition of art in the past. Like, I did call The Room art because it's as bad as it is. It can be bad art, but it's the expression of a man's experiences and genuine feelings on his life, as misogynistic and horrible as those feelings might be. Yeah. I think I would be reluctant to call Manos art, though, mainly because of the bet element. I think there is something very kind of cynical and snide about Manos that holds it back from being a genuine expression of really anything. I think you do get an energy off of Hal Warren throughout that, like, well, I'm in charge and I know what I'm doing, as he shoots everything in an extreme wide that he doesn't have any coverage for. So here's a shot of the dog again. I think that holds it back, even if he did later apparently, gain a sense of humor about it and come to terms with how bad the movie that he made was.
Then I would point you to the pyramids of Egypt, Zach. Are the pyramids of Egypt art?
What? I guess that's an interesting question. I don't know if I would call those art. I would call them beautiful architecture. I would call them historic. I don't know if I would call them art, though. That's an interesting question. Maybe I'll have to ruminate on that and get back to you next episode.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what Mitchell was saying about how evident the era and the time it was made, and what Zach is saying about whether or not it's art, I think these two things are kind of inseparable to some extent. Like, I don't know. What am I trying to say here? But like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if it were made today, I think with the same minimal budget, I think just the place that cinema was in the 60s versus now, in terms of the average person who aspires to make a movie of some level of import or coherence with friends, on a bet or otherwise. I think now even a really bad student film has a through line, or has a story that doesn't routinely contradict itself. If it's shot poorly, it's at least edited in a coherent, less boring way. So I think I would sort of echo my previous comment on how I liked how it felt like it was made by people. I think it's maybe an interesting historical document, if you will, about the development of independent movie making, and what it meant then versus now to decide I'm going to make a horror movie on a bet or otherwise.
I wonder if there are going to be any prompts later this season that challenge your perception of that, Christian. I wonder if there are going to be any prompts that lead to films this bad from now, or or this era at least. Time will only tell.
This film had to have originated on TikTok.
Yeah, that might be worse, actually. Good point.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good button on Manos. Do we have anything else to say about it?
Don't recommend it. Probably a waste of time.
Yeah, I could see it be like a fun thing to throw on at a party for like the first 15 minutes, and then you all get distracted for the rest of it, but that's about it.
Yeah, it might be a good background, like, Halloween party movie, but have something else later in the lineup, because even just in the background, Manos would get boring to look at after an hour. On mute in the corner. Even then, people standing in living rooms, I think we'll get dull after a while.
Yeah, a super obscure barbershop or restaurant that's like the TV is super wide, but the picture is super shrunk, and the captions are like 5 scenes behind, like showing up like a soccer game.
Yeah.
And you look up, and your barber is the master.
Whoa!
Oh no! I don't want that haircut.
Yeah, I would say I would really recommend Hotel Torgo, but for the most part, if you've seen like a comedy review of this movie, which there are quite a few of, because for a while this movie and Birdemic and lots of other classic really bad movies were the bread and butter of a lot of movie reviewing YouTube channels. You've kind of seen everything you need to see of the movie. You're not going to watch this movie and go, well, here's a moment that nobody ever talks about. All the moments that nobody ever talks about are moments in which nothing happens. So that's my final thoughts on Manos, The Hands of Fate.
I can guarantee the NES game is more fun. There's an NES game.
That is an interesting oddity. Yeah, there's a game, apparently, which I did not really know anything about, but it probably is more fun. Because it seems like it was created from a place of like genuine appreciation and fun and admiration, rather than this, which was made on a bet out of money grubbing greed and cynicism.
Well,
I guess we can transition into week in review. What have you guys been watching, doing, listening to over the past week?
I'll go first.
Sure.
I'll go first. Tony, listen to me, all right? How have you never watched The Sopranos? How have you never watched? Tony, listen to me, okay? It's a good deal. It's a good job, all right? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You think this is a freaking good deal? You think this is a good show? In this house, The Sopranos ain't playing nowhere. Yeah. So I finished watching the first 2 seasons of The Sopranos. What? Have you guys seen it, first of all?
No. Haven't seen any.
All right.
My roommate is a big fan,
yes.
But
I'll outline why it's so good, because we already know it's freaking good, okay? First of all, I am sure it's in my top 5 intros of all time. Tony driving from New York to New Jersey on the New Jersey Turnpike while Woke Up This Morning is playing is freaking fantastic. It is phenomenal. Second, it is so easy to take The Godfather and copy and paste it. And I feel like, for once, not only we're talking about actors being really good or being different or being impactful because their actual lives suck, which is James Gandolfini's scenario, because he was going through a lot, alcoholism and horrible life, etc. while this was going on. But freaking phenomenal writing. The writing is freaking phenomenal because it is every episode is outlining the everyday lives of the average Italian guy or men and their wives and their kids in New Jersey. That is literally like the overarching premise is really built around that. It's not built around the fact that they're in a mafia. It's not built around the fact that it's based off of a real life crime syndicate and they do all these horrible things that are well within the realm of possibility, that are either direct riffs from real life or just very slightly exaggerated. And that in essence is why the show is so good. And not only that, the main character, James Gandolfini, is one of the best TV actors I've ever seen, period. But he has a therapist, and he's actually talking about the waste management business, as they call it, and his experiences in life and why he's so stressed out and so anxious. And I feel like this is such an easy, untapped potential for a lot of shows, is tackling, I wouldn't want to say like toxic masculinity because I feel like that associates a lot of stereotypes with it, but just like a general Mediterranean stereotype of the macho man of the house. And I think that is so, there's so much there because you can like tackle their emotions with them while they're having a more angry episode or having a more nice happy episode. You're really experiencing the lives of Tony and of everyone that's a part of the mafia. And I think that is like super incredibly engaging. And the FBI gets involved, and there's a lot of power hungriness and interpersonal conflicts that arise, and it's super emotionally complex, but it's so satisfying to watch. And there's so many moving pieces to it. Everyone has their own individual occupations, and it's super easy to bounce around like what the families are doing and what the different mafia members are doing, and seeing all of their individual motivations and how that plays into the greater picture of Tony's life and Tony's influence. And it's just, that's what makes it so much fun. It's really great. And of course, like there's always one or two episodes that are like, this was kind of lame, but and there's the nature versus nurture argument with the kids. I mean, there's so much there. When you're just doing like a fake biography of somebody's life while they're also having all these horrible like crimes associated with it, and you can only feel bad for them while they're doing all of it, like you've freaking won. You've made a fantastic show that's engaging. And that's why I'm super into it. Yeah, there's 6 seasons, so I'm like a third of the way through.
Gloria does want to watch it. She's usually not a fan of like violent stuff or crime stuff, but she likes Italian mob movies and stuff like that. So it's on our list. We'll watch it eventually.
Yeah, I'll have to add it to mine too. I know his James Gandolfini's son, I think Michael Gandolfini, was in Warfare.
Yes.
And he was in Daredevil Born Again as sort of Wilson Fisk's kind of right-hand man. And he was playing a very funny sort of power-hungry role there that he did well. But I'm not talking about Daredevil Born Again, which was kind of a mixed bag for me. I am talking about more prestige television. I am talking about Andor. Cassian Andor. I rewatched season 1, and then I watched season 2, and this was sort of my gift to myself after finishing year 2 of law school. I knew that if I started watching season 2 during final season, I would not study enough, and that definitely was true. I can say with certainty now, having gotten through and loved every bit of it. I can confidently say that this is my favorite TV show ever. I think it may be the best TV show I've ever seen. I think it may be the best Star Wars since 1980. And I don't think it's crazy to say that. And when people say that about Rogue One or Revenge of the Sith, I kind of grimace a little bit, even though I like those a lot. But I think Tony Gilroy has just written something so special and incomparable. Andor is about personal loss. It's about the suffering these so many individuals go through to uphold this rebellion, to fight for something greater than themselves, that they know that even if they do win in the end, they aren't going to have that victory for themselves. So there's this constant undercurrent of sacrifice, and at some point somebody says everybody has their own rebellion, and you really feel that with every character. And the cast is just absolutely brilliant. My favorite among many favorites is probably Stellan Skarsgård, who plays Luthen Rael, who's this very interesting cultural figure. He's this kind of obscure art dealer on Coruscant, and he does a lot to coordinate the funneling of funds to rebel outlets when they first start in the aftermath of Revenge. And there's a lot of really great political stuff with Mon Mothma. You see her trying to do what she can in the Senate you see the Senate fall apart as it happens. In A New Hope, in Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine declares the Empire is now a thing, but the Senate still exists. ? In A New Hope, in one of the Death Star briefing room scenes, Grand Moff Tarkin kind of exclaims, "The Emperor's just dissolved the Senate for good now." But there's a lot that happens in between those two major events, and there are these scenes of Mon Mothma trying to address the Senate, and it's just nobody is listening, and it's the most crushing thing. And as season 2 pushes this even further, there's this isolated planet that has minerals the Empire wants, and the whole thing is made to look like the French Revolution. And to me, there's even some allusions to Tiananmen Square and major events of political upheaval and autocracy. I think a lot of the bravery of this show probably wouldn't make it on a movie screen, some movie screens overseas. The music is great, especially on that French Revolution planet arc. All this stuff just cuts so deep to me. I'm obviously a Star Wars nerd. I'm a political nerd. I was a political science major, and I'm a law student now. So this is kind of my bread and butter both ways. But beyond the source material, I think the way they approach it is what makes it so great. Especially in season 2, each 3-episode arc is kind of like its own movie. And Tony Gilroy has said he views this as a series of movies. And I think that even working on a TV budget, just putting yourself in that frame of mind means there's next to no fat. There's nothing superfluous. When trailers came out for season 2 and they were really pushing oh, look, Director Krennic's back. Oh, K2SO is back. I got so nervous. I thought it would be this Mandalorian minus action prequel to Rogue One, but those two are barely in it. And it's so story focused, so mature. I have basically nothing bad to say about it. I think it's brilliant. I think everybody should see it, especially if you like Star Wars. You absolutely must see it. And people that complain about it, I don't quite understand. Some people say that it's boring. I don't think that would be an issue for even you, Zach. I know you had a similar complaint for Rogue One, but this is just on another level for me. And yeah, it's perfect. I just watch it.
Well, what I found boring in Rogue One was the constant callbacks and reliance on nostalgia, and you get it, we're setting up New Hope, instead of actually giving the characters personality or destinations or a reason for us as the viewer to relate to or feel anything for them, which I've heard is the exact opposite of Andor. So, normally I don't touch Andor I don't touch Star Wars rather with a 10-foot pole nowadays, but maybe I'll have to watch it. It does sound very current and compelling, and I like Gilroy, so I might have to check it out.
Yeah. Ben Mendelsohn is maybe 3 scenes total. Forrest Whitaker pops up here and there and gives an acting masterclass, but he's barely in it too. I would say these characters are the absolute minimum amount. Somebody asked Tony Gilroy why he didn't put Darth Vader in Andor, and he quipped, because he was part of rewrites for Rogue One, he quipped, "I wrote for him before. He doesn't have a lot to say."
It's because he's already in Fortnite,
Ugh,
which they're being sued.
yeah.
I don't know if you guys know about that.
Yeah, I did hear
I don't
about
think that's
that.
gonna go anywhere because I know James Earl Jones signed away his rights
Yep.
to the whole AI voice thing for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll see.
Thank you.
Does Forrest Whitaker still have his ridiculous hair in Andor?
I think it's like a little bit less ridiculous,
Okay.
but it's still on the big side.
Because I did, like, this isn't a discussion on Rogue One, but maybe I mentioned it in our Rogue One episode all the way back in season 1. Maybe I didn't. In the initial trailers, the character was bald, and then they gave him this big, weird Albert Einstein wig for some reason, and I don't think it adds to anything, or it's very, very strange decision for what was meant to be a gritty, serious movie. But
I have no clue why they did that. Even knowing that the character was like in Clone Wars and the Rebels, so there's this. I know the character's history. I could still tell you not a single reason why they thought changing his hair was instrumental.
Hair on the high side, eyelid on the low side. Forrest Whitaker, King of Kings.
Well, from quality to a mixed bag, I am going to talk about a spaghetti western that I watched just yesterday. We were going to record this episode yesterday originally, and then we had to push it back, so I had a free evening on my hands, which I don't usually. And I decided, you know what, I'm gonna pop on a spaghetti western. We've only talked about one on this show, I think, which was Fistful of Dollars by Sergio Leone. But I think I have discussed in other weekend reviews how in the late 60s and early 70s, the spaghetti western genre was kind of ruled by the three Sergios: Sergio Leone, Sergio Corbucci, and Sergio Solima. And this is a movie by Sergio Corbucci. It's called Navajo Joe. And it is kind of, in a weird way, sort of a progressive movie for the time. It came out in the mid-70s, and the titular Joe is a member of the Navajo tribe, and he is the main character of the movie. And he's a stalwart, upstanding action hero. You know, he's taking out the bad guy. He does kicks and punches and all kinds of cool stunts. There's a very neat scene, which I didn't expect, where Joe is asked to defend this town, this defenseless town, from these bandits who are going to come in and kill everybody who are in search of this gold. And he says, well, you know, if I'm going to do this, I want you to make me the sheriff. And the current sheriff of the town says, no, we can't do that. We only elect Americans in this town. And Joe says, well, my father was born in the mountains near here, and his father before him, and his father before him. Where was your father born? And the sheriff kind of sheepishly goes, Scotland. So which of us is more American? That's a very cool scene. Now, it's kind of negated by the fact that Joe is played by Burt Reynolds in brownface, but, you know, I appreciate where the movie is coming from. So, you know, like I said, a mixed bag. There is tons of cool cinematography all over this. Burt Reynolds, despite the awkwardness of his casting, does all of his own stunts, from jumping on the backs of horses to being dangled upside down during torture scenes to hanging backwards off of moving locomotives. It's a very cool physical performance, despite the fact that he apparently hated working on the movie. He signed up for it because he was friends with Clint Eastwood, who said, oh, I had a great experience in Italy filming with Sergio, this Italian director. You've totally got to work with him. Of course, Eastwood worked with Leone, and Reynolds claimed that he signed on to the movie because he saw Sergio. That's got to be the guy. And later said that he worked with the wrong Sergio. It also has a very, very good score by Ennio Morricone, which Quentin Tarantino clearly loves. He's used motifs from it in Kill Bill and I think Django as well. So a lot of fun. I would give it a 3 out of 5 because it's still, I would say, less than the sum of its parts. It doesn't quite come together into a cohesive whole. It does feel a little choppy. You're always a little uncertain of why Joe is doing the things that he's doing, you know, the righteous things that he's doing, other than the fact that he's just kind of a device for the plot to keep moving forward. But if you like spaghetti westerns, I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's got a lot of the cool stylistic moments that you'd expect from a movie like this. Some very cool gunfights and explosions. It's neat. It's not as good as a Leone Western. I have seen Corbucci spaghetti Westerns that compare. This isn't really one of them, but 3 out of 5, I would recommend it. And with that, is it time to pull our next prompt?
Yes.
Oh boy. Whose turn is it to pull, Zach? You tell me.
Well, what order do we want to go in? Christian, you seem like you might be trying to avoid pulling a prompt for as long as
So
possible.
I think
Is that true?
Christian should go because he's
I
apprehensive.
just don't know how to do it. So this might be an editing problem for Zach.
No, yeah, I can cut out the content. So go to your list, which I shared with you. Did last time?
Yes.
Did you remove that one prompt from the list?
I sure did. Yes.
Okay. So what I did last time, you don't necessarily need to do this, but I went to a random number generator and I randomly generated a number from 1 to 16.
Hey Siri, pick a number from 1 to
He's
16.
owned by Tim Cook.
Yes, I am, but I haven't bought a new iPhone yet, even though my parents really want me to for some reason. Okay, 13.
Okay.
Let's see.
So take number 13, copy that random coded prompt, and then go to the decoder that Mitchell put in the chat.
Yes.
I might keep all this in, by the way, because this feels like it could be funny.
Boomer.
Yes. A tutorial.
Boomer.
Somehow I'm the most tech deficient member of this group. It's
Yeah,
quite unfortunate.
despite the fact that I was an utter Luddite in high school, so I don't know how this happened. But
Zach's like, I don't know how to choose
Okay.
movies on a list.
Paste.
Like, Zach, Chat GPT, come on.
I do not approve of AI, but we might talk about that later this
Boomer.
season. I don't know. We'll see.
Boomer.
Yeah.
Boomer.
Should
do
I
you have the
decode each
decoder
line
open?
separately, Mitchell?
What?
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
Should I decode each
but
line? Okay.
yes.
Well, yeah, you should only have one line, so
Yeah.
it shouldn't
All right.
really matter.
I'm gonna do it.
Do it.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Press it.
press the
He's
button.
pressing it.
Make sure you didn't copy the
Okay,
number
so-
as well.
I did. I did. And I got a bunch of
So
rectangles.
go back to the initial prompt that you put in and take out the number in the period.
Yes, okay.
Boomer.
That's really
Take 2.
anticlimactic.
Boomer.
Okay. Pressing the button again. Okay. Oh no! Not me! How could one of you do this to me? I can't believe you've done this. An Italian horror film or giallo.
Yes, that was mine.
This is evil.
I am invincible.
And this is totally like the prompt to mulligan. But wouldn't it be extraordinarily lame if I mulliganed my first prompt ever in the game of the game? I
You
feel like
make
I
the choice, son.
I don't know. It might
You
be.
make the choice.
What do you
no.
think?
No, I'm gonna play ball. I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
I'm gonna swallow my pride and joy and
You
love
get to choose.
and
You
hope.
get to choose.
I get to choose. I get to choose the gelato and the blood and
All right.
the guts.
So before 7 p.m. tomorrow, we need the Italian horror film Giallo that we'll be watching for the next episode from you.
Por favore.
I cannot believe this has happened.
Buena fortuna.
I hope I get my revenge on Zach very soon, but we'll see.
Molto bene.
Bon appetito.
And I think that feels like a good place to end. So goodbye, folks. We'll see you next week. El fine.
Ciao.
The game of the game of the game of the game of the game.